Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us here this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are located in the world. As you're aware, we here at Teach Away have run a presentation to really explore the hiring trends that you can't afford to ignore in 2018. My name is David McFarlane. I'm the Commercial Director here at Teach Away. I've worked for Teach Away for around about 5.5 years, and I have about 7 or 8 years of experience working within the education sector. My colleague who is also joining me on the webinar is Ash Pugh, our Operations Director, and I'm going to pass over to Ash just to allow him to introduce himself and also to test his audio. So Ash, are you there?
I am here, tuning in all the way from the sunny beaches of Toronto, Canada. Hi, everybody. I'll be your North American accent for this evening's webinar. Like David said, my name is Ash Pugh. I'm the Operations Director here at Teach Away. I've been with our organization essentially since the beginning and oversee all of the day-to-day operations of our recruitment business here at Teach Away.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ash. So what matters most to candidates when they're looking to teach abroad? That really is a question that we have received as an international education recruitment company since the very start. And to be perfectly frank, until now, the most honest answer that we had was, it depends. There was no real credible data-driven answers. They haven't been available. So in order to help schools better understand how they can leverage candidate preferences and perceptions, we surveyed over 10,000 education professionals around the world to find out 3 key things. Firstly, what drives candidates to teach abroad? Why do they want to go in the first place? Secondly, their key motivations and frustrations when looking for employment overseas. And then finally, where they go to research and to search for new jobs. We really hope that our findings will help you understand how teachers go about finding a job, and they also help you in what you can do to grab their attention and ultimately hire them for your school or institution. In terms of the survey, let's take a quick look at who we surveyed. The results are based on the responses of, as you can see, 10,465 educators and aspiring educators globally. Now from this slide, you can see that we got a fantastic response from lots and lots of different locations around the world. So what you're getting is a really balanced view from this presentation. It's not particularly lopsided to specifically US candidates or UK candidates. We got a really good balance in our responses. So that's fantastic. In terms of teaching experience, as you will also see, so we'll start off with curriculum experience. We have around 33% with the US Common Core, 19% from the UK IGCSE and GCSE curriculums. And as you can see, the more specialist curriculums, the AP, IB, excuse me, and Montessori, although slightly smaller, are still very well represented. In terms of the age groups and experience levels of those who responded to the survey, we're really delighted to see that we also got a really good spread. Around 55% of the people responding to the survey have more than 5 years of experience, 22% between 2 and 4 years experience, and then 15% less than 2 years experience. So again, just affirming the fact that from the responses that we received and also the conclusions that we're going to draw from during the next 20 minutes, you can be assured that you're getting a very, very balanced response. So that's fantastic when you're taking away the key feedback points from the presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And so that's some really great information that essentially outlines where we pulled this data from. And as you can see, it has a very deep reach into the international teacher market. And of course, the next step for that is to say, why is this important for me? And those of you, and many of you on the line, it's fantastic to see a lot of names that I do recognize. So I look forward to meeting up with you on the circuit this year. But we all know why this is important for you. Securing your teachers for the year is a mission critical project for international schools. And we know from our friends over at the International Schools Consultancy Group that This is going to be a bigger challenge for us as the years go by. In fact, they're projecting that over the next few years, that this will be the biggest challenge that you face. And so how big is really big? Well, what we expect is that currently this year in 2017, we're looking at a need of over 400,000 teachers in international schools worldwide. And that is projected to grow by over 36% over the next 4 years. We're going to be looking at 581,000 teachers. So we will have our hands full, both you school heads and hiring managers and ourselves here at Teach-Away. But it is interesting to see the actual projected growth on this that the ISC group continues to remind us year in, year out. And so what does this mean for you? It means that there is a shift here, that international schools may not have the same kind of power balance that they had before, and that the demand is starting to outstrip the supply. And so that will flip a lot of the power to the candidates because they are becoming more of a scarce resource. So looking at it from an economic side, as the demand increases and the supply reduces, well, then there is a power shift. Our goal here at Teach-Away, of course, is to increase that supply, and we're able to do so to maintain that kind of negotiating position that you have. The reality is, however, that's going to change perhaps the way, or maybe you need to consider how you reach into the talent pool to showcase your school. And so that brings us to this key question, of course, which is, what do candidates want and what do they care about? And we often think that we have the answers to this, and we tend to operate, especially when it comes to recruitment, on hunches. And we need to remind ourselves that we are in a data-driven world, and in an increasingly competitive data-driven world. And so we need to keep in mind that there are decisions beyond just, I think they want this. We need to dig deeper, and so we've done that for you. Now, before we jump into that, though, I know you're all at the edge of your seats. We'd like to do a little poll. So we're going to take a brief moment. We're going to launch a poll here that you'll see, and then we'll take a little water break, and then we'll come back in a minute. All right, fantastic, and thank you for doing that, folks. It's always nice to get some insight, and here we can see, and so the major one, the source that you feel that the primary motivators are for teachers looking abroad are the travel opportunities, and you are right on the nose with that, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. Of course, secondarily, career progression. No one noted financial benefits, which is interesting. We see a lot of variety in the responses from school heads depending on where we are around the world, and many have identified a lack of job opportunities at home, which is it is always an interesting driver, and depending on where the teachers are coming from, that there's quite a degree of variance within that component as well. Okay, great. So let's dig in and see what we actually found from our nice sizable a large sample size. And so what we found is that, yes, you're right, travel is a key motivator for candidates. And so just in terms of descriptive, travel is motivating 43% of the surveys, or the teachers surveyed. Career progression is also a top of the charts for candidates who are considering going abroad. And you were right, at the lower end of the scale is the financial benefits. That's where we see that, but they tend to outstrip the lack of job opportunities at home. That's on the aggregate for the survey at large. Those of you who identified lack of job opportunities being higher, they are in some countries, frankly, and more micro, depending on the district where they might be living and working at the time, if they are domestic, or depending on where they are internationally. So there is some variance there. But the key takeaway on this is the travel opportunities. And so as an international school head or hiring manager, what does this matter to you, and how can that insight change the way you approach sourcing your candidates? Oftentimes we hear from international school heads that they want to position their school as a learning community first and foremost, because they feel that doing so will pull in candidates who are interested primarily in doing the best job they can as an educator for their school and their school community. The key takeaway from this is that is important. We know that. beyond anything else is that you're trying to secure a fine educator for your learning community to support your students' outcomes and achieve their goals. But first comes the hook. You need to have that. And so you really do need to focus when you're posting your jobs, even though it may seem counterintuitive to you because you want to find a good teacher, not someone who's traveling. Hook them with the travel first. And then obviously, then you need to go for the details, the nitty-gritty on, is this person someone who would contribute strongly to my school community? And so from there, we also wanted to flip it around. And okay, now we know why they're motivated to go and teach abroad. But what is it they worry about? And this is also a key concern, this kind of counterintuitive, as what do they concern themselves with? And this was pretty interesting for us because just from the descriptive side, we saw that almost half had no reservations whatsoever about teaching abroad. And then we got into the common concerns that we see, which are items of personal safety, language barriers, missing home, just the fact that they're moving to a new country, and then the kind of nebulous reason of cultural differences. The key takeaway that we had here is the 46% that had no reservations. And I think both you and I, all of you together who are working abroad themselves or who may have worked abroad at some point in their life, realizes that that might be a bit unfounded, and that's likely those who have not been abroad before. And so these are the unknown unknowns that they have. And it's incumbent on us as recruiters and yourselves as hiring managers and school heads to help highlight some of the things that they may want to. The other side of this circular diagram is to address them, because they will find out about them as they start Googling around and recognize, oh, this may not be as easy and smooth as I thought. And so it would be helpful for us to set them up to face those questions and give them some information that can help them really understand, what does this mean for me to relocate and move abroad? And from there, then we go to, okay, great. Well, now I know that. Why am I going to apply for your position? So what are the key motivators for candidates to apply for a specific job? And this, again, from the descriptive side of things, we identified that overall compensation package for a specific job is very important, as is school location. And from there, we see the career progression, the school's reputation, and then the additional support and benefits that they would get. And so these are important factors. We do want to ensure that we take all of these things into consideration. And beyond those primary motivations for teaching internationally, we know that this is the package of factors that will go into their decision-making process. So one of the items that we need to consider beyond this is, what does this mean to you? And as a hiring manager and a school head, we know that this means that you need to clearly outline to the candidates what's involved in your compensation scheme. And we know that while indeed salary is a significant component of compensation, that there are other factors to that. There are other factors within a compensation in terms of the benefits package, and you need to really properly highlight that as best you can. A specific item in this is the accommodations. So from the recruitment side, and I work with a lot of our international partners in sourcing candidates, and on the candidate side in terms of speaking with them and pre-screening them. And we know that the accommodations piece is actually a pretty critical structure, or a critical piece of the equation. And you can see here that it weighs into about 80% of the other benefits that the candidates want. And oftentimes the decision-making process goes like this to some school heads. Those school heads or hiring managers who have been abroad a long time or may live in the own country where they're or maybe citizens of that country will say, well, I want to give these teachers the freedom of choice here. So I'll give them a stipend instead of providing accommodations for them, because I want to allow them to pick the place that's best for them, perhaps so they can find a place, you know, in a certain neighborhood, or maybe they want a specific style of housing. And we feel that we're providing them with a degree of choice and freedom. The spirit is fantastic in that sense, but it doesn't necessarily tap into what their key concerns are. So keep in mind, you're designing a package not for you and from your perspective, but from the candidate's perspective. From the candidate's perspective, in the absence of assigned accommodations and a stipend, could mean I'm on my own here in facing this decision. So how do we overcome this gap? What we recommend is that provide a choice. So those of you who already have arranged accommodations, that's fine. You may want to work into your budget for the candidate that may want to choose their own. And those of you who provide only a stipend, you may want to have an option on hand so that you can provide accommodations. So recognizing through that interview process and then into the offer stage that there is an option here for the candidate can address what is clearly a key concern for these candidates and these applicants. Now, from there, I think we're going to toss it over to my colleague, David. And David is going to jump into some of the other items there that came out of the survey.
Absolutely, thanks, Ash. We're now going to look at where do candidates want to teach abroad, and why does that matter to you? So as we move on to the first slide, it's going to show us that there is a pretty distinct difference in terms of where candidates are wanting to go and teach overseas. And actually, believe it or not, this landscape has changed fairly significantly over the past couple of years. We've seen the Middle East actually move slightly down the ranks, and the big mover has been Asia. Now, yes, we are aware that the Middle East is within Asia, but for the interests of this data, and due to the volume of international schools located in the Middle East, we decided to split them out, really just to give you more granular information and a better picture of what the real story was. So if you're located in Europe, you know, you're sitting pretty, so to speak. There's a huge demand for candidates who are wanting to teach overseas in Europe. Asia, as I mentioned, has been kind of the big mover through the ranks in previous years, and that's primarily down to the increased international outlook and focus of powerhouses like China, and of course Southeast Asia, always a huge draw. We're going to focus here just on what you can maybe do if your school is not in the most preferred location, or actually even if it is, how do you attract candidates to apply to your school in what we know is now a very competitive marketplace, and in the next few years is going to become even more so. There's a few things that we've seen work very well for a number of international schools like yourselves. We here at Teachaway, we work with international schools in more than 60 different countries, so we have lots of experience to draw upon. Harking back just to Ash's previous comment about leading with a hook, really, really important. If you imagine that the job description or your job posting is the first impression that a candidate is going to get of your school, it's incredibly important that you spend a lot of time not just listing the job details, but also ensuring that you're speaking to their motivations for wanting to move overseas. You need to get today's travel motivated candidates excited about the place they'll be relocating to. In other words, you have to make your school's location stand out. What makes living and teaching in your city and your country appealing? You can highlight things like local attractions, whether you have world-class shopping, easy access to transportation, distinctive cuisine, notable cultural opportunities. No two candidates are the same, and therefore their motivations are not necessarily the same. And likewise, no two schools and no two locations are the same. So it's really, really important that you identify who your target candidate is, and you also identify what it is about your school and your location that is going to be appealing to those people. As we move on to the next slide, we've gone a little bit deeper, and we wanted to also find out what candidates' preferred settings were for an international teaching job. And not surprisingly, the majority of people preferred an urban setting. The hustle and bustle of the big cities like Dubai or Seoul, you know, they sell themselves almost. But we've got to make sure that for all of the schools that are located in suburban and in rural communities, they're aware of how they can face the challenges that they're going to face when it comes to recruiting teachers from overseas. And there are lots and lots of different things that you could do in order to make yourself more appealing to candidates who are maybe considering an urban setting and who have not spent too much time considering a suburban or a rural setting. If you are in one of those settings and you're thinking to yourselves, we can't compete with the Dubais of the world, you really have to identify what it is specifically that you could offer the candidate that one of these urban settings cannot. Things like housing options. They're typically much more spacious in suburban or rural communities, and the cost of living is so much lower, which means that you could save much more money and potentially explore the region in which you're relocating to in much more depth. Teachers also don't have to contend with the disadvantages of city life. Things like traffic jams, poor air quality, high crime rates. Have you considered those, and have you built those into the way in which you're promoting your school? If your region offers recreational opportunities, be sure to list them in detail. In particular, any nearby outdoor activities or famous cultural sites that are likely to appeal to travel-motivated job seekers. Also, if you are in a rural setting or you're out with a major city, how close are you to that city, and how effective is the transportation network to allow people to travel to the hustle and bustle on the weekend and then escape it during the week? One of the other big things that I pick up on when I'm speaking with schools that are located in a rural or a suburban area is that there's a much greater sense of community than perhaps schools in an urban setting. And although that's not the case in every instance, if you are in a small town, it's very often the case that as part of the school faculty, you're going to become very familiar with your local surroundings, and you'll get to know the community and be able to give back a lot more. As we move on to the next section of the webinar, employee engagement and retention is one of the hot topics in the world right now, not only in international education, but also in every industry. So we thought we would try and give you some insights into this very important topic to make sure that not only you're hiring the teachers that you really want for your school, but also once you've done that, you're able to retain them. One of the things that we found out, one of the critical things that we found out, is that onboarding is a really critical process. Yet, for some reason, it's all too frequently overlooked. New hire turnover continues to be a significant issue for most international schools. The first days and weeks can often determine whether or not a teacher will choose to stay at the school long term, or whether they'll get cold feet and look for other opportunities, or worst case scenario, move back home. From our experience, schools with a comprehensive onboarding strategy have a significantly reduced likelihood of attrition within the first few months compared with schools with a weak or a non-existent onboarding process. So don't just hire a great teacher and cross your fingers. You've invested heavily in order to find the candidate, and you've gone through the recruitment process and sold yourselves to the best of your ability. You've really done the hard work, but make sure that you have a solid plan when that candidate arrives in country to make them feel welcome and well prepared for their new role. A quality onboarding process will pay for itself in the long run. And when your teacher decides to stay for the long term, in part due to the positive experience they've had right from the start, you'll reap the rewards of the feedback that candidate will give to your school community. As you can see from the slide, we asked our respondents how schools can help new hires adjust to their new environments. And I don't think it will be a surprise to anybody to see that an effective onboarding process is the number one. Really, the process starts the moment that you decide to hire. If you're waiting until the teacher arrives at the school in order to start your onboarding, then it's already too late. As soon as the teacher says yes, you need to be initiating an onboarding process. There are lots of really interesting and cool things that I've seen schools do in order to try and make candidates feel welcome and feel part of the school community before they even arrive in country. Things like connecting them to the current teachers within the school via Skype or some online video conferencing tool, so that they can ask questions that maybe they don't feel comfortable asking leadership. Could be things as simple as dress code or things to bring to a specific country, climate. It really just starts to build relationships very early and makes them feel far more engaged. The important thing is to ensure that the candidate, after they've accepted the offer, remains interested in the position, the country, the school, and then for you as a leadership team to raise the excitement levels of that candidate as the start date approaches. So when they do arrive in country and arrive at school, they're really excited to get going and they're in the best frame of mind possible. As we move on to the next slide, we know that it's not just new hires that international schools need to worry about. Keeping the existing teachers at the schools is incredibly important because, as you know, it's going to save you a lot of time, it's going to save you a lot of money and a lot of effort when it comes to hiring new teachers. If you've really done the hard yards and invested heavily in getting a great teacher to your school, then you're going to want to keep them at your school. So what are the key things that make candidates want to stay? And as you'll see from the slide here, we asked respondents what makes for a dream job. What is your ideal position and what does it offer you? And as you can see, 61% of people are really, really focused on professional development opportunities. 59% administrative support and 58% access to up-to-date technology and educational resources. When I look at this slide, there's one key thing that jumps out at me, and it's the fact that all of the bars are relatively high. So as you'll see from the asterisk at the bottom there, these are weighted responses based on a top 3 ranking. So if you're wondering why the percentages don't add up to 100, that's why. But anyway, going back to my key takeaway, because each one of these individual things has such a high percentage level, you have to get it right in every single aspect here. You can't be a master of one and then not so good at others. You really have to have a rounded approach when it comes to ensuring that your teachers are happy on the job and that they're willing to stay in their position for a number of years. I'm going to pass back to Ash now as we look at how candidates are actually searching for jobs.
Fantastic. Thanks, David. So we know where they want to go. We know what they're looking for. We know what draws them into a specific job application. We know what's going to make these teachers happy. Where do I find them? And that's exactly what you're asking now, I'm sure. How do I find these candidates, and where do we go to seek out my ideal candidates to allow my school to grow and maintain my learning community? So let's dig in a little bit on that. So in the past 10 years, I've seen so much change in the way international teacher recruitment has evolved. It has been as precipitous a change as we have seen in the subscription rates to newspapers over the past 10 years. It has been a complete flip-flopping in the way the approach is done. And this has been seen in our partner schools' marketing budgets and advertising budgets and recruitment budgets. Teachers are looking for jobs online, overwhelmingly, as they do with everything else in their life. And so it's not a surprise to us at all that the big shift is happening. And in fact, it's 2 years ago, I would say it's happening. It's done. We're here now. This is the reality, and this is no longer a new trend. Online job search methods are free, like Teachaway, and they don't involve the time and cost incurred in traveling to job fairs. This is the way to go about the work. And so we surveyed our candidates to see exactly where they were going. And so 97% were online. We saw that 44% were heading to the school website, and that there were 37% of the candidates were looking at personal referrals, then job fairs, and then at the bottom, the lonely newspaper. A couple of things you want to pull out of that, besides the fact that the online approach is the preferable approach, obviously, it's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, is it's worth noting that your website is your face to the world, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's something where you really need to focus attention, and also with the personal referrals. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But before I jump into the next one, we're going to do a poll. So let's launch a little poll here to get some feedback from you. All right, that's fantastic. So thanks for responding to that. And yes, okay, good. Everyone gets it. Online is the place to be. So let's keep moving with this and see what else that means for our candidates. Great. So the question for you is, are you there? Are you posting your positions online? And we hope that you are, because frankly, my friends, it is time to abandon the older recruitment approaches. Focus your resources in the right place. We run a business, and in many ways, even though you're running a school, you're also running an operation that needs to get the best bang for its buck out of its operational costs. And that is no longer in newspapers. It is certainly online. And so online, that means many things. That's an awfully large blanket statement. What does that mean? Well, what we know that is, of the over 9,900 respondents who indicated that they prefer to search for jobs online, we asked them to rank their favorites. And so for them, a vast majority, over half, said that industry-specific job boards is where they want to be. They could go to the shopping mall, but if they're buying shoes, why don't they just go to the shoe store? And so that's exactly what they're doing when they come to teachaway.com. Beyond that, of course, search engines to find Teach in China, or Teach in Korea, or Teach in Dubai. They're doing these through search engines, and predominantly, more than anyone else, Google. And so if you're in a country that restricts access to Google, even teachers within your country, foreign teachers within your country, are still using Google via VPNs. So Google search rankings matter. Yes, even in China, very much so. And so you need to make sure that that is a major consideration when you look at where these teachers are going to be seeking out their next teaching position.
Ash, I hate to jump in here, but I've delivered this presentation several times whilst on the conference circuit in the last few months. And just to clarify here, what we're saying is that 52% of candidates search on industry-specific job boards. And on the left there, you'll see Teachaway is an example of an industry-specific job board. We're not saying that 52% of people search on Teachaway. Similarly, 29% of people use search engines, and Google is an example of a search engine. Indeed is an example of a job aggregator, and LinkedIn is an example of social media. So just to clarify that, as it has caused a little confusion, so hopefully that clears up any questions that will come at the end of the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. I appreciate you jumping in. I certainly don't want to, obviously we are from Teachaway, and we are, of course, we love our own site, but absolutely for clarity's sake, using industry-specific sites like Teachaway. Of course, I would be remiss to say that we're not the leading one, but hey, point taken. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And so moving forward then, so how do we help candidates discover you? And this is a major consideration for schools, because over the past 5, 6 years, 7 years, we've seen groups driving new school website platforms to you and school management systems that help outline your website to make it as welcoming as possible. And it is as important as ever to make sure that your website is in line with an online audience and ensuring that the best information is getting to them. And so things like that mean that, okay, fine, I'm a school in China and I don't have a strong English section on my site, and that would be very costly to me. Well, there are ways to overcome that without having to take on the major additional costs of that. And so obviously, again, a bit self-serving, but many schools in China, for example, use our site to showcase landing pages of their own school, to take advantage of those search engines like Google, to take advantage of our search engine optimization strategies, and to be able to showcase your school in English language, to be able to drive that traffic and those applications to your school. And so that's one of the ways that you can certainly ensure that teachers are getting to you. And then as well, of course, not only is it your web presence, but your web presence through the lens of mobile technology. And yes, of course you do. I already have spent so much money making sure that I'm ready to go on my website. Well, we know that over 50% of job seekers are navigating online to job boards on mobile. And so what? What does this mean? Well, what it means is you need to ask the question, is your website responsive on mobile technology? Is your site readily navigable on mobile? And so that's something that you would need to check out and ensure. We know that over half of our job seekers at teachaway.com navigate here with their smartphones. And so candidates expect to be able to do that. And Google's algorithm for ranking your school in search actively penalizes websites that aren't optimized for mobile. We know this. This is the work that we do. And so it's critical that your school website or the career website that you're advertising your vacancies on is mobile responsive and is fully compatible with all devices. And I think now we flip it over to David to do some sum up.
We do, yeah. Thanks for that, Ash. Yeah, I don't think we can emphasize how important being present on mobile technology is, especially in this day and age. So finally, let's take a look at how far in advance candidates are searching for jobs when you need to be advertising your vacancies to ensure that you have a chance to hire the best international teaching talent, and what you can do as an employer to put your best foot forward and make a great impression on potential new hires. Thanks for sticking with us here, folks. I know we are running over time, so I'll make these slides really as succinct as I possibly can. As you can see from this slide, 41% of job seekers say it takes them over 6 months from when their job search begins to when they accept an offer. Candidates take their time and ensure that they are accepting the job that is best for them. 73% of candidates prefer to start their job search anywhere from 3 to 6 months ahead of time. Now, folks, if you think to when the majority of the candidates that you hire accept their jobs, and then dial it back 3 to 6 months from that date, what does that tell you? What it tells me is that you need to be advertising your jobs earlier and earlier as the years go by. We here at Teachaway, as I mentioned, we work with a lot of international schools in over 60 different countries, and we're seeing schools advertising their jobs now as early as September and October. So you really do have to make sure that in order to stay on top of the current and future hiring trends, that you have an ongoing recruitment process that allows you to be present over an elongated period of time on the platforms where candidates are actually searching for jobs. When I started in the education space, as I mentioned, over 5 years ago, it was commonplace for teachers to hand in their notices of intent in January. Now we are having schools have teachers hand in their notices of intent as early as the 1st of November. So if people are having to tell their schools that they're going to be either staying or leaving on the 1st of November, then it makes sense to think that they're looking for jobs even earlier than that date, even just to see what's out there. So make sure that you have your job adverts up nice and early in order to make sure that you can catch the best talent that's out there. As we go on to the next slide, I don't think that there's anything really shocking here. What we know is that Teachaway candidates submit job applications to more than 5 different institutions a year. Again, we're just reiterating the point that candidates are in a real position of power here, and they're going to make sure that they accept the job in the school that matches the best with their motivations. So make sure that when you're thinking about your hiring process, it's as easy and as simple as possible. Make sure that when somebody applies to you, you contact them efficiently and swiftly, and that the information that you're providing the candidates with really sells your school in order to make sure that that candidate is motivated and interested to talk to you. And then if you want to keep a candidate's interest, you need to move quickly again, as I just mentioned, but an inefficient and slow-moving hiring process is going to kill your recruitment efforts, and it will result in a disengaged candidate pool. As you can see from the slide, what our data shows here is that candidates who are contacted by a hiring school within 3 days of submitting an application are 27% more likely to accept a job offer and 22% less likely to drop out of the hiring process. When you quantify those percentages, that really adds up to a high number of candidates, so hugely important. One thing you can do really to make sure that the hiring process runs as quickly and as smoothly as possible is to use an applicant tracking system. So for you as a hiring institution, if you can bring all the candidates into one system, screen them very quickly and efficiently, communicate with them very quickly and efficiently, and then sort them into various different stages quickly and efficiently, that's going to really benefit you and your HR team, if you have one, whether it's one person or 5, to make the best decisions possible. Another key thing is you'll also be able to identify where candidates are dropping out of the recruitment process. So you can identify if it's an issue with your job postings, if it's an issue with your interview process. or an issue with the actual offer itself in terms of salary and benefits. So really key thing there, try and adopt an applicant tracking system. It's really going to help you out moving forward. And then as we move on to the final slide, again, guys, apologies for running over. But when it comes to hiring teachers from overseas, one thing is clear. International schools no longer have the upper hand. Today's hiring environment is incredibly competitive, and with so many top international schools, candidates are going to expect to receive multiple offers over the course of their job search, and they'll pick the one that is most exciting and most relevant to their specific motivations. We hope the presentation has given you some new insights into what teachers want throughout their job searching journey and provided you with a few key takeaways to incorporate into your recruitment approach. We've identified 5 key takeaways for you, as you can see on the slide. I guess firstly, travel is a key motivator for candidates who are wanting to teach overseas, but career progression and various other factors are also of critical importance. So use this to your advantage to help you sell your school's location and what your school can offer and entice prospective candidates to choose your school. Money matters, but not as much as you'd think. Identify the key factors that attract candidates to your school and make them visible in your job postings. Remember, a job posting isn't just a list of duties, it's your opportunity to make a great first impression on a candidate. School branding needs to be a top priority. In an increasingly competitive marketplace, you really need to sell prospective candidates on why they should choose your school. And candidates are looking for jobs online. We know this. And remember to prioritize the job search channels where teachers actually go to research and discover job opportunities. And then finally, guys, recruitment should be a year-round effort. Please, please don't wait until the very last moment. In today's competitive international education marketplace, one-off job postings for 30 days at a time just will not cut it. If you're not leveraging a year-round job posting subscription service or industry-specific job posting boards, then you're missing out on a real golden opportunity to build your talent pipeline over time and ensure that you're not only attracting the right candidates for your school, but you're attracting the very best candidates for your school at the right time. And with that, we're going to open up to the floor. I appreciate we have 0 time left, but if there are any burning questions out there, please enter them into the question box and we'll do our very best to answer them. If we don't get to your questions today, rest assured we'll send you an answer via email. Yeah, I'll hand it across to you. All right, Ash, are you available?
I sure am, David. I sure am.
Fantastic. I've got a quick question for you here. Steve's asked, he says he gets a lot of interest in his school, but he needs to see confidential recommendations. Does Teachaway have confidential recommendations or checklists as part of their process?
Yes, is the very short answer. The more complicated answer is yes, we do, and it's better than most in that we use a tracking piece associated with our reference checks such that they're not easily fraudulent. We know that a lot of schools are still relying on typed and handwritten letters of reference that are kept confidential, but are frankly easily forged. And in a day and age where there is a lot of concern about authenticity of documentation, we use a process that allows us to see whether or not a candidate's reference is coming from the candidate or coming from someone nearby them or someone more further apart. And we use various digital techniques that I won't get into too much because I don't want to let away our secret sauce. But yes, the quality and veracity of our reference letters is far beyond that which the industry standard is as it stands. So yes, Steve, we do. And I'm happy to have a chat with you about what that looks like in depth.
Fantastic. And then last question, we'll just take one more from Vera. She's wondering if Teachaway do background checks for the candidates who register on our website.
Sure. So for our candidates, what we have a couple of ways of working with our candidates. Primarily, we receive candidates where schools will sign up for a subscription on our website, or schools will sign up for a subscription. They receive applicants that come to their schools, and that's essentially a self-service model. For our full-service side of things, which we do for some clients that have specifically high hiring needs or larger organizations or specific needs, we will get involved with the process with the criminal record checks. In all of my recruiters on my team, in their processes, we take the lessons that were learned from the International Task Force in Child Protection. I sat on the recruitment committee of that task force. I'm very aware of the many things that unfortunately have happened within international education over the past number of years. And we worked on creating the process and the recommendations from that task force. And they are fully implemented here at Teach-Away through our full service recruitment approaches. So yes, for those candidates, they are pushed through those processes and the questioning and screening processes. For the applicants that come to our system, we really broaden the net to ensure that their applicants are coming in to your opportunities. We recommend, and we can work further with schools who sign up for our subscription packages, our annual year subscriptions for unlimited recruitment. We can let them know what those recommended processes are to ensure that they're doing the best that they can to ensure the safety and security of their school and school community.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ash. All right, everybody, I think that's all we have time for. That just leaves us to say thank you very much indeed for joining us for the presentation or the webinar, wherever you are located in the world. As you can see, if you would like to download the complete International Education Recruitment Report, please visit www.teachaway.com/report. And if you have any questions, or if you would like to speak to Ash or myself about how Teach-Away can help support you with your recruitment strategy or professional development strategy for the next year, please email us directly. My email address is there, dmac@teachaway.com, and Ash is also on the screen, ash@teachaway.com. You can also find us through our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, and of course through the website itself. So thank you very much, and all the best.
Thanks, everybody.